At 26 years old, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. Epilepsy can be diagnosed as an adult as well. However, I had been having focal seizures for years before that, just didn't know what they were. At 4 months pregnant, I woke up in a hospital. I had EEG stuck to my head. I didn't know what was going on. The room was just very bright. My head was hurting. I could hear my husband. I could hear medical staff, and I just had absolutely no idea what had happened. I found out that my husband had found me having a grand mal or tonic-clonic seizure in the middle of the night, and of course called 911. He didn't know what to do. So I got there. We confirmed that yes, it was a seizure. And then from there, it just kind of spiraled. I continued to have these seizures on a regular basis. I started seeing a neurologist right away. He was a general neurologist. He treated lots of different things. And he, there's only certain things you can do when a woman is pregnant to address it, to test it, medications, those types of things. So eventually, when I was about 8 months pregnant, he said, I'm sorry, you need to go to an epileptologist or neurologist that specializes in epilepsy. So I did. I found my neurologist, who I see now 20 years later. He is absolutely wonderful. And he started walking me through the whole process of what a focal seizure is, what an aura is, the fact that you can be conscious when you have a seizure. I didn't know any of those things until I met my current neurologist. He would ask me things like, have you felt a deja vu sensation a lot? And it kind of turned on a light bulb. Yes, I have. That happens to me on a regular basis. He said, have you ever been in a situation where you just kind of zone out? You don't know really what's going on. You don't know how you got there. Yes, that's very common for me. He said, is there ever a time in your life where you lost time? So the answer to that is yes. And I told him about the story, which I'll follow up on, about when I got lost on the subway and didn't know how I ended up in the Bronx. I had been on a trip with my friends and they were still in Manhattan, and I ended up on the Bronx, and I didn't remember how I got there. And I was very scared. So over time, he, talked me through all of these experiences and explained to me I have had epilepsy since probably middle school. I had never had a tonic-clonic seizure. There was really no reason for people to think that I had epilepsy. I just had no idea that these things were associated. I have had deja vu since I was in middle school. I, knew the term deja vu, so I sort of just associated with, well, everybody gets it. But I didn't realize that I was getting it way more often than the average person. And once I started making those connections, it was kind of like all these times where I had just no idea what was going on. I didn't know if it was anxiety or panic attacks, because I've never really experienced either of those things. Once I started talking about it, I realized how I had been experiencing these minor seizures, or they call them partial seizures. They have different names, but at the time when I was diagnosed, they were called petit mal partial complex. So the names have changed, but I didn't realize I was having those this whole time. And auras. Auras are sort of, for me, an out of body experience. Starts with that very intense deja vu. And then I feel sort of like the room is closing in. I don't know any other way to describe it. It's like I'm sitting here and it's just the room is closing in. And then this part is so hard to explain, but someone who has auras knows what I mean. I feel like I'm standing here. I'm having this conversation. I'm talking to whomever, but all of a sudden I'm out of there and I'm observing, and I am not the one participating. I'm watching. And so that out of body experience is how I describe it. But that's the one thing that I could not ever explain until my neurologist said, yes, that's a symptom of an aura, which is, for me, it was a precursor to a seizure, but I also have those regularly just in my daily life. I always have. So my seizures, we did, over the 20 years that I have had it, there have been lots of tests, lots of observations. I had brain surgery, and eventually now I am seizure free. I had brain surgery 5 years ago. So I am seizure free. I do not have tonic-clonic or focal seizures anymore, but I do have auras. Those started before my grand mal seizures, tonic-clonic seizures, and they continue afterwards. So that's not something that I think it's something we try different things. We've tried different medications. I don't know that it will ever go away, but we'll keep trying. And I can deal with just auras. That's enough for me, other than the anxiety of could it lead to something more. But living with an aura day to day or week to week or whatever is not that bad compared to what I also had to experience. And like I said, I was experiencing life with auras before I ever knew I had epilepsy, and I was completely fine. I've known that I've had epilepsy now for 20 years. And I wish that I had known sooner, but being diagnosed was really important to me. And in the long term, it has made my life so much easier to understand. Not fun experiencing epilepsy in any way, shape, or form, but at least I can understand what's happening to my body. And I wish I had known sooner. But it's very comforting now to know that the neurons in my brain just aren't doing what they're supposed to do, which is why these things that I couldn't explain happen. So I will talk about on this channel a lot more about my diagnosis, how it developed, how I became seizure free, my brain surgery. This is kind of an introduction. I made these videos years ago, but I didn't really know much about social media, so I'm starting over. So that is how I was diagnosed.